I learned already.
Hilchos don't work anyways.
Someone went to the Rebbe once by dollars during a certain Lebedik Zman, and he tells the Rebbe, ich gehe das Schmur, als der Rebbe ist nicht zufrieden mit meinen Chaverim, he tells the Rebbe. Ich gehe the Protem. So I'm using this as a dogma. So the Rebbe stopped him the minute he said Schmur. The Rebbe said, wenn ich wollte gedacht reagieren zu jeder Schmur, wollte ich nicht gehabt keine Zeit, nicht auf lernen und nicht auf lernen. That's what the Rebbe answered, and that was the end of the story. Akoponim. Okay, Shalom Aleichem. I was asked to give a shtickle shir on something to get Hilchos Pesach. There's no real chidushim here, but that's just like you have to chazar over the halachas every single year. On every single Yom Tif and every single sugya, we have to continue chazaring, or else the shikha is mitzuya. So it's obviously kedai also to chazar over these in yonim. Lamrois, that the particulars of this sugya of the mechidas chametz bisman hazeh are mainly only the rabbonim yoshvei almidin who actually come together with the goy to do the mechidas chametz need to know all the protei advarim, as opposed to in Deiris Shelafonenu, that every single yid had his own goy, and they used to call them over and try to make a mechidas chametz, which was lav dafke done properly. So now we have a mile that it's done properly, at least in this nekuda. But nevertheless, there is a famous chiddush of the Alter Rebbe. Klal Yisrael knows about it. Lav dafke they know all the protei hadvarim, but it's tam kedai, and even if you know about it, just to chazir over to know what was the chiddush of the Alter Rebbe, what was the Alter Rebbe coming to Bavon with this idea of mechidas chametz ba'arav kablan. Alter Rebbe's kama takonis and chidushim. Many of them, Klal Yisrael has accepted legamri, like sakinim milutoshim, if we even know what that means. We don't even know what's a sakin that's not milutish. I don't know what it is, but everything is today based on the Alter Rebbe's takona. In Hilchos Nida, not all the chidushim of the Alter Rebbe. Stam Maimer Hamuzger, for example, I never knew this. I was under the impression that the chiddush of the Alter Rebbe had a count versus haflaga, the moshel from that if you have a shorter haflaga that it gets pushed off, the famous Alter Rebbe in Kuf Beites, where he says be'emes loike divrei zev pshat min Ramban, machlokes with the Shach and the Bach and the Taz and the Ramah, if I remember correctly. I thought Klal Yisrael accepted the Alter Rebbe's shitta, but later I was looking in Svarim, lav dafke, some do like the Shach, some do like the Taz. But either way, mechidas chametz ba'arav kablan, most of the Chassidish Oilam accepted the Alter Rebbe's takona of ba'arav kablan. The Litvish Oilam mostly not, as we'll speak about why and what the Alter Rebbe's response would be to those that dafke don't want to use mechidas chametz ba'arav kablan. But it's partial. Let's start from the beginning, and it'll make it a little bit easier. What's this whole inyan of mechidas chametz? So bekitzer nimnitz, there's actually a very short and concise skira klolis on mechidas chametz and amaydim ba'alocha from Rav Zevin. It's kedai to look and read it there. It's very geschmack, and how he writes very perfectly and goes through the whole Seder Shtalshlus. But basically it starts off with the Tesefta. Tesefta says if a Yid and a Goy are traveling on a boat over Pesach, you have a big real problem. I mean, if you have to burn all your chametz and you're going to starve after Yont if you're on the boat. So what do? So therefore the Tesefta gives a takana. You sell the chametz to the Goy, and then you buy it, or you give him the matana, and you buy it back from him after Pesach. That's the Nekudas Adover. Therefore, you know for sure that you'll have what to eat after Pesach, even though you know you can't be over and bal yiro bal yimot. So that's the basic nekuda of mechidas chametz. How did it start? It started really with the people, the kretschma owners that they had these big feslach, big barrels and vats full of mashke, and it would be a big hefset if they would have to empty out all the mashke and destroy all the mashke. Actually, there's this famous story when they decided the goy didn't want to buy the chametz, the mashke from the yid. So he put it out, and 3 big dogs came and said, this famous story that goes around. According to Alter Rebbe, the chametz is still also. Alter Rebbe paskins in Tov Memches that even if you were mafkid the chametz outside, and you were mevatel the chametz, and you were not b'kaim tashbisu, the feidish it's also b'hanom and the rabbanon after Pesach. You weren't over bal yiro bal yimotze, but you still cannot have enough from the chametz. It's in Tov Memches, I think Sif Chavtes. So that story, those dogs relied on the other poskim. If the story is true, as they Muslim doch sagen. Otherwise, he didn't pour it out. He left the barrels outside, and then could be because he went to different. There's different gifts in the Maisa if it happened. It's a gzeira midrabanan because everybody will lie and say that he was mafkid the chametz, and really it's chametz over al Pesach. But Al Kaponim. So how do you make sure that you don't take this big hefsed? Now that is that today, all the store owners, all the frumakis, they don't want to sell chametz gomer. Yeah, that's until you own a grocery store. The minute you own a grocery store, is ois frumak. You know, you have to be able to live. Darf machen Geschäften, so you have to keep the chametz. You can't get rid of the chametz. Was tut man? Darf man the kefiner eitzes, so the simple eitzes is mechiras chametz. From them is nicht also that every single year to make life easier, to make sure that you weren't chas v'sholom eiver and bal yirah bal yimatzeh or kalim that you don't want to clean. V'kayetze b'zeh kol chad v'chad l'fum min hogoi makes a mechiras chametz. That's basically where the whole idea of the mechiras chametz began. They have all the stories and all the jokes about they brought the broken pots and pans. The guy didn't want to buy it back. They didn't want to sell it. But this is all arum de sugya. So how did it start? So if you look in Shulchan Aruch of how you do mechiras chametz, so be'etzem, the best way to do mechiras chametz is kipshute with a kinyan kessef and a kinyan meshicha. Because Shulchan Aruch, Alter Rebbe brings it in Tov Mem Ches, how you have to do mechiras chametz. You have to push it. The guys to come and take your tam-tams out of your house and take it to his house and then pay for it, or kinyan meshicha, whatever it is, meshicha, hakbo, kessef, whatever, and be kind of the chametz. That's the best way. Can move on. That there's no te'elus in that, because that defeats the purpose. We're talking about not having to gather necessarily all the chametz or having the goy come to your house and take it. The whole point is that it should be b'mkoimehu, and it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the goy. Now, b'di'evet is different. Alter Rebbe brings from Cheshem Mishpat here. It's in Siv Ches. Whole arichas. The yeshem that a goy is only kena b'kesef. A yid is not vartere mois kenes l'chom meret hakona that you're not kena with mois, but a goy yeshem dafke meshiche, dafke kesef, dafke bo. Alter Rebbe goes through all the shittas. So we want to make sure that without kinyan meshiche, that's the idea. Without kinyan meshiche, that the chametz is nimkar legamri to the goy. That's the basic idea. We want to make sure that the other kinyanim work. So the first kinyan that we want to make sure works is kinyan kessef. The goy pays for the chametz, and therefore the chametz is nikne to the goy, because b'di'evet al kloponim, a goy is koine metatlim b'kessef. The problem is that the price that the goy can afford and the price of the chametz is not always equal. So, for example, you own a krechma, you own a grocery store, and you have a tremendous amount of chametz, costs, let's say, millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you want to sell it to a goy kinyan kessef, he can't afford it, doesn't have millions of dollars to pay for the chametz. So where's the kinyan kessef? By the way, Maimer Amuzger, it fell into my head now, there are some Yidden, the Lamoshel, they think that the Divrei Chaim, I'm actually Einakov from Divrei Chaim, believe that machine matz is chametz gomer. So those that follow that shitta, that believe that chametz, that machine matz is chametz gomer, which we don't, famous word. I don't know, ask him. I don't understand Russian. The word to Reb Nashab. Siocha Roshon, no kushi did nada. You understood what I said? I was careful though. The Hakdama will say later if you want, when we're not on the tape. But he said, Siocha Roshon, alles is good, no kushi did nada. Man darf nicht essen. When you get machine matzah. So Al Kaponim, so they have a problem because the stores don't sell machine matzah because they don't consider it chametz gomer. So Baba Verchassid told me he buys machine matzah before Pesach to sell it to his goy. Like this, it wouldn't be to him chametz shavar al Pesach, because in the store the machine matzah is chametz shavar al Pesach. Because they don't sell the machine matzah. So Al Kaponim, so there is a simple eitzah. The simple eitzah is to sell the goy the price whatever he can afford. You ask the goy, you have $10? You ready to buy my stock for $10? The goy's like, yo, no problem for koifas. Let him pay $10. Mainly, you made a full kinyan kessef. It's a beautiful idea. The problem is, if the goy has any brains, he just bought himself stock, millions of dollars worth of schoida for $10, and he won't sell it back to you if he has any brains. You have to find a goy that's makiroi, that's your friend, or an idiot, one of the two. And mainly, you'll get your chametz back after Pesach. It defeats the purpose. That's, You can't? You can't pay up. You charge him $10, no, you didn't pay up. You sold it in Bedover Mu'et. And Be'emes, the first, one of the earliest Mekoides of selling chametz is from the Turmas Hadeshen. The Alter Rebbe brings and we'll quote it soon. And he says to sell it to a goy that's Makiroi, Bedover Mu'et, or Neisne B'matona. So you sell it in Bedover Mu'et, you have a full kinyan kessef, or you give it in B'matona, B'sholem al Yisrael, the problem is, If he's smart, he won't give it back. It happened to Yerushalayim a few years ago. I remember the story. A few years ago, it could be 10, 15 years ago also. One of the killers decided they're going to do a real mechira on kinyanim. They got all their expensive mashkin. They got the Arab worker. He came with the truck. They told him, "Did he give you the mashkin, the chametz before Pesach?" They were sure that he's going to give it back after Pesach. He took the truck, went to East Jerusalem, and then sold it and never came back. So they lost their chametz. Fine, say that they talk weren't even about you know about your matzah, emes. But the chametz haben sie nicht. So that issue became: how do you make sure that the goy actually owes you the money for the chametz, and you still have kinyan kessef? That's the issue. So be'emes, this sugya is a sugya in Gemara. It's a Gemara in Baba Metzia, which in the yeshivas we're all learning it this year. And the Gemara discusses mamish this case with kinyan kessef, the guy buying a karka. Also called the Gemara. The Gemara says like this: he sold the field for 1,000 zuz. He only had $200 cash, so he paid $200. Basically, the Gemara says the mechir is not chal. The sale is not complete. Anyone can back out till you pay 1,000 zuz. So if the mechir was chayzer, yad lekeach alol yoyno, the lekeach has a choice. Rotza imer leitani moisa, give me back my money in gay. Or he could say, tell me karka keneged moisa, give me 200 zuz worth of karka, because that's what I bought into. But the rest of the karka I never got. If I can't, the Gemara says, mancho lekeach chayzer beyada mechir alol yoyno. Rotza imer lehelach moisecho. The problem is, if a person doesn't have enough money to pay for a piece of karka, okay, let's say you get a private mortgage. Today, when we buy a house or buy real estate, we pay in full. We borrow the money from somebody else, called a bank. We take the money and we pay the moichel and finished. But what if the guy gives you a private mortgage? Which, by the way, if it's a yid, you have to make a heteriska because he's not giving it to you for free. So according to this Gemara, if you take a 20-year mortgage or 30-year mortgage, the mechir is not chal. Anyone can back out. The moicher could say after 10 years, sorry, you never paid me up, take half the house, whatever you want, up to you. Or the lekeach could say that. That's what the Gemara says. That's a big problem. You can't do business like that. We set up the mechira in such a way that they cannot back out. What do you do? It's just push it. Okay, it's a kessef le'ani ploini ben ploini. Macharti saw the ploini shleploini be'elav zuz. V'nosan li mehem osayim zuz. V'hareni noishe boiches mei zuz. You do like this. Let's say I want to buy a field. I only have 200 zuz. So I tell the guy 200 zuz. The meicher says I need 1,000. I don't have it. I only have 200. So the meicher, no problem. I'll lend you 800 zuz. Here, take 800 zuz. As a halva, not connected to the field. And then I give him back the other 800 zuz. Now we're paid up. I happen to owe him 800 zuz. I'll say halva. That the money that you still owe him is not connected to the mechira. It's a separate halva. It's a separate halva. Now you actually don't have to give him the 800 and take it back. As the Gemara says, if I owe you 100, you owe me 100, we don't actually have to make the exchange. We make it ki'ilu. I paid you, you paid me. The money that I owe you is not connected to the mechira itself. It's ki'ilu, the money, you lent me the money and I paid you back the money. The mechira is chal. As if you paid up in full. That's the takon of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. The loshen in poskim for that is v'hamoiser zakafti olav b'milveh. That's the loshen in poskim throughout Cheshem Mishpat. When you have this idea, v'hamoiser, the rest of the money zakafti olav b'milveh. I owe it to you al halva. I don't owe it to you part of the mechira al kinyan for the karka. I paid you in full. We have a separate cheshbon that I owe it to you al halva. Azay zokt Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So came the Neder B'Yehuda, and the Neder B'Yehuda says, based on this Gemara, you sell the chametz to the guy, $100,000 worth of chametz, $1 million, whatever it is. I got into a store full of chametz. The guy says, I only have $1,000. No problem. You take $1,000 for the guy, and you say, it's ki'ilu, the rest of the money you owe me like a halva, mitzadikin, and you paid up in full. It's kilo, I lent you $1 million. You gave me back $1 million. Never happened, but it's kilo. And now the rest of the money you owe me. And it's a kosher full mechiras. I'm a foolish gemara. Nobody can back out. That's what Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says. So if you do that, shalom al Yisrael. After Pesach, you come to the koi. pay me up. So you're chonished. You want the chametz back? Sure, take the chametz back. Everyone's happy. And Shalom al Yisrael, everything is good. So based on this Gemara, there's a pashta eitzah to have kinyan kessef work. Hamoisa zakafti olav b'milva. And that was the Neidah B'Yehuda's takana when he made mechiras chametz. He realized kanidim stamba. The goyim got smart. That's probably what happened. And they started coming after Pesach, taking the mashke. And l'chid nabnishkan choice. Avada, it's sold. It's yours, fair and square. And the lashon in the shtaris says the kessef yodem hoida is masking to this. It's like a stempel that it's ketikan hamadina, everything. And the Alter Rebbe's lashon in the shtar. So he came up with this idea of hamoisa zakafti olav b'milva. That's basically the nekuda of the Neidah B'Yehuda. Now the Alter Rebbe, in Shulchan Aruch, in this siman, there's actually a reference to the siddur, which is very, very rare. Alter Rebbe says you should look in the kuntres mashakasav b'siddur. So some say it was added in later. Alter Rebbe didn't write it b'shas he wrote Shulchan Aruch because he wrote the siddur later. But in the back of Hilchos Pesach, there's a kuntres of the Alter Rebbe, 2 pages called Hilchos Mechiras Chametz. It came together with a kuntres which we don't have. Alter Rebbe says the kuntres that I wrote ishtakad last year, kuntres. So there, Mistama, the Alter Rebbe wrote all the nimukim and all the maramekemis to what he's writing, but here he writes bekitzer, and this is from this lashon here, from these papers, not part of Shulchan Aruch that the Alter Rebbe wrote, is where we have the whole chiddush of the Alter Rebbe of mechiras chametz bar of kabel. And he starts off, it's in the end of Hilchos Pesach. Asher harbe misvarim arishonim zal lo yotzu lo irat fus adayin b'mei achreinim zal ataz v'mogen avrom ban mishochem achreim ad ato korevel dereseinu eila. Basically, the Alter Rebbe makes a yesod in halacha. Anyone who writes the piskei halacha based on the Alter Rebbe, this is a yesod. That since many svarim were not available, the Shas, the Mogen Avram, and the Taz wrote their piskei dinim, and now the new rishonim that we have are available, we cannot rely on what the Mogen Avram and the Taz writes. Which, Maimer HaMuzgid, there's a whole sicher from the Rebbe in Mem Zayin asking the Shaila, how can we trust the Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch? If he based on the Shloishes Amudei Hayro, the Rif Rosh, and the Rambam going Basaroiv, and then you find out that the Tfus the Bes Yosef had was wrong, and the Rambam really held fakert. So what do we do now? So whole sikha from the Rebbe, how the Maisa, the Bes Yosef, and it's kinida limited to the Bes Yosef who was writing a Shulchan Aruch, that he made sure to know what he's writing and to agree with it, even though later he would find out maybe the Rambam said something fakert. By the way, Maimer HaMuzger, they actually have the library that the Bes Yosef used. They have the actual, many of the Svarim, I think they got it somehow from Mitzrayim, now it's in Tzfas, and they actually see certain poskim and Rishonim that the Bes Yosef used and which Tfus he had, which is actually more meduyik than the ones that are nofuts today, even after they redid them. Maimer HaMuzger. So Alter Rebbe says, Kinire ba'alil, me'sefer Shita Mekubetzes al kama mesechtes v'kayetze. The Shita Mekubetzes just started to come out, and the Mogen Avram and the Taz didn't have these Rishonim. Ulezois, do not rely on the kulas. But Alter Rebbe already knew the answer. The emes, we don't care about this mechiras chametz so much. Why? Because it's anyways only a derabbanon. Minateire, we mevatel the chametz. We say kol chamira. The whole mechira is because bittul is not enough. It's not enough. Shema levatel b'lev shodim. Shema yimtzer glus kayofe. But be'emes, minateire nish geferlich. No, is the mechira a schwache mechira, nish geferlich. And in truth, Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch does bring such a svara. But here the Alter Rebbe knocks it down the gamri and aposhet the svara. He says why? He says, why? Because you're not mevatel the chametz that you're selling to the guy. It's a sheker. You can't say something is bottle if you don't mean it. Other chametz, every yid means it when he's mevatel the chametz. No shaila. No yid wants to be over and bal yimotzei. So befeidish, he means it should be bottle will ever hefker. But if you know that you're planning to buy it back from the guy after Pesach, so you're befeidish not mevatel it. So maybe let's say the Rai says like the Alter Rebbe. Befeidish mechiras chametz. If you sell our chametz gomer, you see here from the Alter Rebbe that he's referring to chametz gomer. There are those that are makbid not to sell chametz gomer, but the whole mechira was for chametz gomer, for people who own kretschmis in stores. The whole mechira was meant for chametz gomer. So the Alter Rebbe, it's not part of bittul. Kimavur b'tshuvas harashba b'shem Yerushalmi, Chaim Pirush Ramo b'darkei Moshe b'prichodos ulezois im mechira eina kedas over olav bal yirah bal yimotzei. Boom. Alter Rebbe says if you don't do a proper mechira, You're befeidish over bal yirah bal yimotze b'deraisa, because that chametz is not b'chlal bittul. So now we have a yesod. We better make sure we do it right. Says the Alter Rebbe, im kein yesh loima b'zeh. Iker din mechiras chametz lenochri v'daite sheyachzirenu l'achar haPesach hamusker b'divrei rishonim and the kessef the psochim and the Yerushalmi hu b'meicher b'mois mezumonim v'loy ba'akofe. The whole story on the boat that the Mishnah, that the Sefta says, is basically you're paying cash for the chametz, full amount, whatever he charges you. No hakofe, no credit. Basayim zuz and elef zuz. Chadoshim mikorev bo, who's that? The Neder Yehuda. L'sakin lichtev v'hamoiser zakafti ola b'mil v'chul. Says the Alter Rebbe, v'gam ze einoi moyu l'fi das g'deilu ha'rishonim zal. Doesn't work. U'kenire ba'alil, I'll prove it to you. Mashakosu b'zeh g'deilu achrenim ha'raizal b'trumas hadeshen. Shalei motzot hakona limker b'hakofe v'liskis olav b'milveh. V'liskif olav b'milveh. Look at the Trumas Hadeshen. Trumas Hadeshen writes, what do? You sell it to your friend B'dover Mu'at. Why did he write that? He didn't chap the Gemara in Baba Metzias, a Gemara Meforeshes in Baba Metzia, in Dafayin Zayin, that you could write V'am Moiser Zakaf, the Olav B'milveh. What was he thinking? Muzman doch sagen that it doesn't work. L'fi das g'doylei harishonim zal. Therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, Ulezois, there's no takona, no other eitzah, unless you have an order of kabbalah, which we'll talk about soon. Right away, everybody sees this. Doesn't know what the Alter Rebbe is talking about. Well, why doesn't it work? So it's like Gemara Meforeshes. It's like Gemara Meforeshes in Baba Metzia that Amoises Zakaf the Olav B'milveh works. It's caught it in. Why does the Alter Rebbe says doesn't work l'fi das g'deilu rishonim zal? So this the Chassidim Kemuvan didn't care, like Zevin writes. Rabbi Zevin in American Baloch. The Al Chassidim Chabad he writes ein maloimar. Of course they use a lot of kabbalah. But even non-Chassidic Chabad also do. We don't care. The Alter Rebbe says it doesn't work. Kabbalah. But the Chassidim wanted to understand. So the Alter Rebbe's brother, the Maril, and the Tzemach Tzedek both answered and explained the shita of the Alter Rebbe. Okay. And basically, it's merumas in the fact that the Alter Rebbe chose the shita mekubetzes as the svarim that were not available in Mei Amogen Avrom Ba'ataz. Because if you look in shita mekubetzes on this sugya, there's a Tshuvas Horif. It's a long Tshuvas Horif. It's actually a Targum from Loshen Arvi. The Rif wrote it in Arabic, the Tshuvah. There's some Arabic-speaking Yidden. And if you look at the Tshuvas Horif, it doesn't work. Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh. And in the Svarim, the Melaktim today, there are many other Rishonim as well that hold that it doesn't work. What's the pshat? Because the Gemara continues. The Gemara asks a stira. Gemara brings the same story, the same Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel in this case says that you don't have to write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh. He says clearly, Aval Mochal saw the Be'el of Zuz, v'nosan le'mehem chomesh mei Zuz, kono machzer le'yashar afil lachar kamashonim. You don't have to write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh. But the Gemara asks us to write in the next piece of Gemara. One Brayser Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says you have to write Harei Yinoishe boy kilu. So Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh. Another Brayser, you pay part, you pay down payment, a deposit. Gendik kono mazok lekasher. It depends why you're selling. Sometimes a person is selling a property because it's called an halacha. It's costing me too much money. It's not a good field. It's a headache. I need to get rid of the car. So also you're not ayil v'nofek azuzi. You don't need the money. You need to get rid of the property. Money you're living on, you'll get the money whenever you get the money. So if you're loika ayil v'nofek azuzi, you're not knocking on the guy's door to get paid for the karka, then you don't have to write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh. But if you're ayil v'nofek azuzi, if you're doing business and you're selling, because you're in the real estate business, you're not selling your plate also, you're selling to make money to go buy something else or whatever, and you're ayil v'nofek azuzi, then unless you write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh, the guy didn't pay, you're not koine. I need the money, the whole nekuda. You're not koine unless the guy pays. The kinyan might not be kessef, but you have to pay. And Kolzman, you didn't pay, it's not a kinyan. So if you're v'nofek azuzi, you have to write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh. But that's the Gemara. Zok the Rif. Very interesting, says the Rif, and other Rishonim as well. That if you're ayil v'nofek azuzi, when the Gemara says it's a good kinyan, and you write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh, which you could, the kinyan kessef still doesn't work. The Gemara means kinyan shtar. The Gemara means that if you didn't write Hamoises Zakafti Olav B'milveh, and you made a chazokah even, because karkas nicknamed the kessef shtar, but chazokah, it's not a good kinyan. Till you pay up, no kinyanim will work. Because I'm ayil v'nofek azuzi. Zokt Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, there's an eitzah. If you write hamoisa zakafti ola b'milva, then the other kinyanim will work. Aber kinyan kessef is not the kinyan that's going to work. Hazei zok derif and other rishonim. Says the Alter Rebbe, when you're trying to sell chametz with kinyan kessef, that's the kinyan we're referring to. Writing hamoisa zakafti ola b'milva doesn't help, because if you're ayel v'nofek azuzi, all it helps is writing on Moses Akafti Ola B'Milva that if you do a different kinyan Meshicha will work, but kessef will not work. Lafi das G'day Rishonim Zal. That's not Pashut Pshat in the Gemara. Obviously, Pashut Pshat in the Gemara is certainly mashma that kinyan kessef works. But Shita Mikubet brings the Rif and other Rishonim that clearly hold that the pshat is that the other kinyanim better be done properly. If you didn't have any other kinyanim and you're ayel v'nofek azuz, you befeinish not going to the karka. The Mehela sagt the Alter Rebbe that the Rabbi Yehuda was sovar l'sakin v'loy tikin. He tried to be misakin that the kinyan should work based on this Gemara. The problem is that if you're writing on Moses Akafti Ola B'Milveh, that's a simin that the kinyan doesn't work. It's a kinyan kessef. You need other kinyan. The Stechemed, the Stechemed writes that he's noyig poi chevrin to do like Ragoyin Reb Zalman Miliadi. I think that's how you refer to the Alter Rebbe there. To use an Oref Kabbalin. L'maisi, he says, I don't understand why someone who's selling chametz is considered ayel v'nofek azuz. That's what he makes a hard. Now, be'emes, so the Rabbonim and the Poskim and the Svarim are all dealing with this issue. Why is a meicher chametz, why is mechiras chametz ayel v'nofek azuz? The emes is, it's not a Lubavitcher problem. The Rabbi Yehuda also felt you're ayel v'nofek azuzi. Because if you're not ayel v'nofek azuzi, you bechlal don't have to write a Moses Akafti Ola B'Milveh. So Gemara Meforeshes. The Gemara says, Claude, that if you're not ayel v'nofek azuzi, you could sell, give a deposit, and the kinyan kessef is chal. The fact that the Rabbi Yehuda bechlal was misakin to write a Moses Akafti Ola B'Milveh is a raya that for some reason he also felt that mechiras chametz is ayel v'nofek azuzi. So the ha'orah of this techemed is not specifically. It's connected to the Alter Rebbe because that's where the idea comes out, because that's what the Sheidas Yehuda writes. And that's what the Tzemach Tzedek writes. That when you're ayel v'nofek azuzi, the kinyan is not chal. But if you break it down, you'll see clearly that the Rabbi Yehuda also must have felt for some reason that mechiras chametz is ayel v'nofek azuzi. So be'emes, als Lubavitcher Chassidim, we're not achroi to answer this shayla. It's a shayla, say that. We're not achroi to answer the question. So if you take a look in the Svarim, Bet 11 has a kuntres in the back of his Tikkun Mikvois, in the back is a Kontes Mechiras Chametz. Rav Belenov has a Sefer Mechiras Chametz, Word of Kabbalah. So they all deal with this shayla. Some say, "Go, you're not saying Mechdas for your ayel v'nofek azuzi. If you're not going to get paid, you're not going to be happy. You're not like in the business. If you're in the business, Lashon Hebrew is hakesef tzarich litgalgel. You know, so you got a little bit of money, you take the money, you buy something else, and eventually you'll get the money. But if you're not in the business of selling chametz, you want to be paid. If you're not paid, you take a hefset. It doesn't matter which answer is emes. I think there's another simpler teretz, enochanami. Lav dafke mechiras chametz is ayel v'nofek azuzi, but it could be. What if a guy poshet hotish kan geld? It's very possible that someone who's selling chametz in his store, not the temp-tems that you have in your closet. A guy who has a store and he has a lot of chametz and he's living on mortgages and borrowing money. He needs the money. So what about that guy? He's also selling chametz. You want to make sure that for him it's also a good mechira. So for those people who are ayel v'nofek azuzi, which could be many of us, mainly you want to be misaken a shtar that makes sense l'chol hadeyes. Either way, for some reason, all the poskim, koilo the Rabbi Yehuda, the Alter Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, Sheidas Yehuda considered mechiras chometz ayel v'nofek azuzi. The mele, since you're ayel v'nofek azuzi, the kinyan kessef is befeirish not chal. So what do we do? Problem. Mele zok the Alter Rebbe, have a eitzeh. Ulezoyis ein takona acheres limke ba'akofa elo liyisyad Yisrael acher ba'emtza shelo la Yisrael bala chometz shum eisek ba'olam imanochri akoyne chometz v'lo yeh hanochri nishar chayiv klum lebala chometz elo liyisrael acher shelo hoyo hachometz shaloi adayin me'olam v'gam hachoyv shenis chayiv azman piroin hu la'achar Pesach. So Alter Rebbe have a poshet eitzah. The guy pays you with a check. What's the check? The check is a star from another yid that's mischayiv to be achroi for the rest of the money. An orev kablan. Chilik of an orev. Regular orev is if the loiva doesn't pay, you go to the orev. An orev kablan is basically 10 loiva ani pereya. I'll pay lechatchila. Later, I'll go to the loiva and I'll make a cheshbon with him. So that.
Why can't you just write another kinyan?
What do you mean? Well, because we are. We make all the kinyanim. Right now, the first and foremost kinyan that works according to many poskim is kinyan kessef.
Okay, but I can just
You can't be kinyan metaltal mishtar. You have to use kinyan agav. And how are you going to do agav? You have to buy the karka. How do you buy the karka? We'll discuss that in a minute. We're getting there. But the while we're dealing with kinyan kessef. The only eight is that the guy has another yid who's not part of the mechira. You can't be an orev on your own transaction. So you have to have someone who's selling or doesn't own chametz or is selling his chametz to a different guy with a different rav. And he's going to come to the guy and he's going to make a special star with the guy that says, I'm taking achrayis for the rest of the money. So when the guy gives you the down payment of chamesh me'ezuz, plus this star out of kablan that he got from this other yid, you're done with him. He doesn't owe you any more money. The kinyan is finished. There's a kinyan kessef. There's no chiyuv of money anymore from the guy to the moicher, to the yidden who are selling the chametz. Ubemela the kinyan kessef is chal. That's the Alter Rebbe's shita. Only on the extra money. He paid. He gives you cash, the down payment. He gives a kinyan kessef, and on the extra money, it's chal. Now, I was zoicher. Let's call it zoicher.
Owes more money.
The idea is that the koina has to be paid up for kinyan kessef to be good. Whoever the koin is a technicality. Kinyanim is a technicality. Even legally, everything is a technicality. People always ask me, so what do you mean? Is it real? Is it not real? The question is simple. If someone slips, whose insurance company is going to pay? That's the bottom line. I mean, if you want to know who really owns it, at the end of the day, legally, there are laws. If the technicality happened, then it belongs to the koina. And his insurance company is achroi or the moiches. So if the koine doesn't owe you any more money, then there's no kinyan. So b'meila, what?
Go back to what Alter says about achrayis. If you look at insurance companies, you don't need to, it all boils down to achrayis.
Whatever the law is, we'll soon talk about achrayis in the chametz. Is that so? So b'meila says the Alter Rebbe, that's what you're doing. And Maimer HaMuzgir, I was a bocher. My father, the Rabbanim get together in Florida to sell the chametz. So I was zeiche, come upon him. I was a bocher also, a kid. My father used to take me along to go sell the chametz. I witnessed, many years the mechiras chametz, and we're the Lubavitchers, so we have to make sure that we get the agav kablan and do it correct. So many times, my father would tell me, please sell. I should write my chametz down in New York, by my zayda in New York. So when I come to Miami, I should be able to be the agav kablan. So for many years, I was the agav kablan. So I just remember stam a dion that happened between my father and Rabbi Korf, soll sein gesund und stark. So we would do this start out of kablan, right then and there. But here the Alter Rebbe writes, when he describes what happens, he says you should give it to the goy show shtaim before the kinyan happens. That the out of kablan should make this deal with the goy show shtaim. And we didn't do this show shtaim because we came there to 10 o'clock in the morning, and that's when everything happened. I signed the shtar, the goy, everything, and he was like very upset that it wasn't done show shtaim. So I don't know if that, obviously the other rabbanim didn't get in the spol, and they said it doesn't have to be done show shtaim. I found the lashon here before, but that's time my was good. So the first time that I was in Orav Kablan there, it was all the kehillas got together, Lubavitch and Snagdashid, and then actually Lubavitch is then by the mechiras chametz. We run the show. The Lubavitch and Rabbanim run the show. The other ones sit on the side. One particular Rav gets up and he starts to scream at me. Isn't he a retsukuma? I'm a bocher, 15, 16 years. I don't know what he's talking about. Isn't he a rat? What's he talking about? So my father got up and said, Hostakasha, this is what the Alter Rebbe writes. So he said, but Moshe, that's why he didn't use a lot of Kabbalah. And that's the reason why many of the Litvish Kehillas do not use a lot of Kabbalah. What's the reason? The reason is because if there's any Yid in the whole process of this Mechiras Chametz that's davening against Pesach, that nothing should happen to the Chametz, is the Orav Kabbalah. The Yid who's a moicher, I'm selling my chametz, I'm not worried. What'll happen if something happens to the chametz? The guy has to pay me. I have a shtar with him. The Yid, the Orav Kabbalah, is going to have to pay me. At the end of the day, who's the end guy who's going to lose all his money? The Orav Kabbalah. Because if something happens to the chametz, the guy Orav Kabbalah still has to pay. Yeah? He's going to come to the guy. He knows the guy is the janitor in the building. That's his name. And therefore, the Orav Kabbalah lost all his money. So the Orav Kabbalah is a reitze b'kiyumay of the chametz. Against Pesach, he wants to make sure that the chametz is in existence and nothing happens to the chametz. So when they have this conversation after Pesach, they can agree, give back the chametz, I don't have to pay. So fragt sich the shaila, the reitze b'kiyumay, according to many poskim, you're over b'dreisem, b'drabanan, what's the difference? It's a problem to be a reitze b'kiyumay. Isn't he a reitze b'kiyumay? And because of that, many of the Litvish kehillas do not use an Arav Kablin, because the Arav Kablin is a reitze b'kiyumay. So, I mean, if any Litvish Rav were standing here, I'd say I have a simple Eitzer. I'll be your Arav Kablin. I don't mind. Take a Lubavitcher, he'll be your Arav Kablin. V'shalom al Yisrael. Say that. Oh, before it bothers them about these kinyanim. So, aber sakut kasha.
If the Arav Kablin is in the race of you take him out, then doesn't that make everyone else a race?
No.
Right. Hold on a second. If the young are right.
So first of all, your shaila is a good shaila. Therefore, many of the Litvish kehillas make sure to get a rich guy. By the way, they actually, because of this, they make sure. And if you take a look at all the pictures, what goes on, and all the Mekem Sakadeshim and all the big mechiras, they take big people that could afford. He has real estate, he has businesses, he has chayzvas, he has assets. That technically speaking, you're not a reitze b'kiyumay because you'll have to pay me for the chametz. If you worry talking about reitze b'kiyumay. So for that, they take care of. They have a rich guy, abedor of kabel, the good, so they could also take a very rich yid. He's still a reitze b'kiyumay. He's not interested in paying Yanim's chametz. Why would I want to do that? Is zichar a reitze b'kiyumay? The richest yid in the world is going to be a reitze b'kiyumay for the chametz. I'd rather give tzedakah than have to pay for Yanim's chametz. The chalamal reitze b'kiyumay. It's a good kasha. It's a very good kasha.
You got a 13-year-old that doesn't understand.
Doesn't matter. So l'chaira, what's the bottom line? The bottom of the answer. So if you take a look in the famous sikha that Rebbe, when they get the Tzukerkes with the Rebbe Rashab and the Tzemach Tzedek, if you look in any of the modern Rabbon, I don't mean modern as in modern Etiquette, Poskim and Rabbonim, they all write that if you have cake, mezenis, cookies from any Heilige Tzadik, Heilige Rebbe, yeah, make sure you don't sell it to the guy. Why? Because you're reitze b'kiyumay. You're reitze b'kiyumay. You're selling it to the guy, and you want to make sure you're going to get it back after Pesach. The Rebbe's, whatever tzaddik it is, cookies, cake, mezenis, lekach, whatever it is. The mela, you better make sure to eat it before Pesach. That's what they write. And then, what? No, I want money. I don't need my tam-tams. The faders don't need my tam-tams. Kens mitzon b'chaved gadol. I don't need the tam-tams.
What if you have a special mashka or this or something?
Yeah, taka. Yeah, it's a problem. If you hold it to reitze b'kiyumay, it's a problem. But if I pay you for it, you can't buy another bottle of Blue Label. Special taka. Don't sell. Finish it. You're stuck. If according to these poskim, that a reitze b'kiyumay, yeah, you have a big problem. If you say reitze b'kiyumay is a problem, you can't sell it. We have to fan for the Alter Rebbe. So b'meila, they all write that you can't sell this cake and stuff to the guy because it doesn't help. You're reitze b'kiyumay. You're still over. You want chametz.
What's the issue?
Oh, the poskim say that there's a issur midrabanan on being reitze b'kiyumay of chametz. It's a issur, special issur. Even if you don't own it, yes.
You want it to exist?
Yes, for your benefit. Also, you're going to take a loss. Huh? Al derech, well, yeah. Al derech, what it says there before. If you're mafkir, you want to get it back, okay, then you're not over. Doesn't matter. There's a special issur of reitze b'kiyumay. We'll talk about the case in a second.
It's not that it means like from Shavar, it's that itself.
That itself, you're over in Balira. Yeah, there's an issue itself for reitze b'kiyumay. No, the sale is good. You're doing an aveda still, being reitze b'kiyumay the chametz. The sale is good. If you hold reitze b'kiyumay is a problem, why? You just heard now about reitze b'kiyumay. How's that kasha? If you had heard 10 years ago about reitze b'kiyumay, so now you know there's two problems. Now it own chametz or be a reitze b'kiyumay. What's the problem? Look at the Rishonim, the Tur. The Tur says if you give a guy a keli, chametz, and he's using the keli because the guy puts food in it, so the keli is not going to break when it's hot. It's asur because you're a reitze b'kiyum of the chametz. It's not even yours, the guy's chametz, because it's protecting your keli. That's the story there. Not allowed. It's not your chametz b'kal. So Akoponim, in that sikha, the first thing the Rebbe says, why did the Tzemach Tzedek tell the Rebbe Rashab, or the Rebbe Marash told the Rebbe Rashab to eat the candies? Because you're a reitze b'kiyumay, so you can't sell it to a guy. This is the first option that Rebbe tries. What does the Rebbe say? The Alter Rebbe doesn't hold of the issur of reitze b'kiyumay. End of story. That's the end answer. After all the pilpulim and reitze b'kiyumay, the real answer is the Alter Rebbe doesn't care about the reitze b'kiyumay. That's the real answer. So Litvish Rabbonim who are afraid of reitze b'kiyumay have a valid point. It's not the pshat. What am I says Alter Rebbe? No, they have a valid point. Because if you're going to go with the mahalach and there's an issue of reitze b'kiyumay, it's not poshut. Now, if they want to be mekayim the Kinyan properly, they should just hire a Lubavitcher to be out of Kablin. That's all. But be'etzim, there is a valid point if you're worried about reitze b'kiyumay. We, the Alter Rebbe, and the Poskim did not. The Alter Rebbe brings a diuk. In that din, where the Alter Rebbe brings the story with the keli of the Riv, of the Tur, the Alter Rebbe writes, the Isur is because you're having Hano from the chametz. Hano now from the chametz. Not because you're a retsukuma. The Rebbe brings it in the order there. You can take a look at the Sichitz, Parsha Boy. So at the end of the day, answers your question about the sentimental mashke as well. The Alter Rebbe is not choishish anywhere in Shulchan Aruch for the issue of retsukuma. And that's why the Rebbe has to come up with a whole new beer why you have to eat the candies. I'm a fakofnish the Rebbe's food to a goy. So I had this shaila. I have a bottle of kosher brocha that's in my fridge. I keep on filling it up. So I put it in the closet, the mechira to the goy. But I don't sell the wine. I just put it there because the keli, the bottle, it's gedreikt darum the chametz. So, but I'm not actually selling because it's not chametz. Wine is not chametz. So I'm not actually selling it to the goy. We don't sell mizonis or any food of a rebbe, a heilige food to a goy. It's not the recheretz. Of misadreitze b'kiyuma, at the end of the day, there's no problem. That's the end nekuda of why the Alter Rebbe doesn't care about the Reitze B'Kiyum. So basically, with the Alter Rebbe's chidush over here, out of Kabbalah, he covers the Kinyan kessef sufficiently. The guy pays a down payment. He gives you a check from the out of Kabbalah, which means we're done. We have no relationship anymore. Now, because of this, when you buy back the chametz, who do you need to go to? The out of Kabbalah or the goy? So there's different minhagim. It's tutzach like them amongst the rabbanim. Some rabbanim claim you have to go to the out of Kabbalah first. I'm not saying pay me. And the out of Kabbalah says, I don't have any money. Let me see if I can figure out with the goy if we can give you back the chametz. Other rabbanim figure they go straight to the goy, and it's really not a chisaron betzim because he's the owner of the chametz, and he could be masking to give you back without the out of Kabbalah. But either way,
Well, what if out of Kabbalah? You go to either one you want.
technically, and a harami.
The out of Kabbalah can't sell it back.
No, he has to get permission from the goy to sell it back. Sure. Now says the Alter Rebbe, Lemaise, Kinyan kessef is not so poshut that a goy is kind in the title of the Kinyan kessef. This whole of Kabbalah was for Kinyan kessef, but lav dafke were kind, which is, by the way, why you don't have to be makbid to buy in a store that only sells with a lot of Kabbalah, because even the Alter Rebbe is not ultimately being soymech only on Kinyan kessef. We're going to talk about the other kinyanim now. But why? Because yesh oimrim that a goy is not kind of a kessef bilvad. So the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings it to do kinyan agav, which means you sell the goy a property, and agav that kinyan agav that karka, you're kind of all the chametz together with it. Here comes the same property. How do you sell the property? The goy also doesn't have money to sell the whole property. So the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, the same geschäft. Sell it with a down payment with an Orev Kablan. The same thing. So really, we do two Orev Kablans. There's two story Orev Kablans. One for the actual chametz, and the second one is for the karka that the goy is buying to be kind of all the chametz agav the karka, also with an Orev Kablan. Now you don't want to sell it in bedover mu'at. Please sell me your karka bedover mu'at because I'll walk off with the property, right? So you have to write it, ensure that it's not sold bedover mu'at. But here comes a little bit of a knetch. Interessante knetch. This is already going back to the Neder Behuda's times. Which karka do you have to sell for kinyan agav? We learned the Gemara in Kiddushin. It doesn't have to be the karka where the chametz is. I could sell you a karka in one place, and agav that we're kind of metaltalin somewhere else, and it's a good kinyan. Nevertheless, if you look at the shtar, it says you're kind of the chametz, the karka where shebohem, where the chametz is. What's the reason for that? Because some poskim Shulchan Aruch made a different problem. You can't own chametz from a goy, have chametz from a goy in your house that you're mekabel achrayis on the chametz, even if it's a goy's chametz. If you take achrayis, your shomer that takes achrayis for a goy's chametz in your house, you're not allowed because you're mekabel achrayis. Who's achroi for the chametz? If the tam box was opened already, okay, it's not closed. Closed has a fixed price. It was a half a tam box, and it got lost. And I come to the goy, pay me. Does he have to pay me? No. He's going to say, prove to me how many tam-tams there were. I'm achroi to make sure that I can show the goy how many tam-tams are here to know what he has to pay me. You weigh it, you find out, you prorate it based on how many ounces is in the box, how much he has to pay you. So you're achroi to make sure that the chametz doesn't get lost. Nus, fragen doch poskim ebazei, was helft the ganze mechides chametz? You have chametz shall go in your house. Kabbalas achrayis. It's awesome. So what's the eitzah? It's not in your house. If you give the goy the mokim where the chametz is, it's doch not your house. So even if you're mekabel achrayis, it's nicht gefährlich.
The only kinyan he has in the character is kinyan mother.
Yeah.
So is it
No, we don't do kin. What? Kin shtar, huh?
on the character?
Yeah, Bob. I can't for sure with kessef. So akaponim. So because of that, we also sell the karka, the mokim, where the chametz is in order to avoid this problem. The poskim, the achronim, the shadis Yehuda, they all say it's not a problem. It's not a real kabbalah sachrayis. It's a default kabbalah sachrayis. I'm not achroy for the chametz. I don't care that the chametz get lost. It's a goy's chametz. He won't have to pay me because I can't prove it. That's not called kabbalah sachrayis. In halacha, kabbalah sachrayis means that I tell you I'm going to make sure that the chametz is still existing after yontif or whenever you come pick it up. If not, I have to pay you. That's called kabbalah sachrayis. Here, it's not a real kabbalah sachrayis. It's only because I have no way to be toiveya from the goy, the price of the chametz. What if I have a picture of the box and the price? I have the receipt, and the box got lost. Of course, the goy has to pay me because I can prove what the chametz was the moment of the mechira at Pesach. So that's not a real kabbalah sachrayis. But lemaisa, because of that, we also sell the chametz where the mokim is. Now we have a problem. If in every single shtar it says you're selling the chametz where the mokim is, okay. If you're renting an apartment, you can't sell that to the goy. It's not yours. Okay, you could sell the cabinet maybe where the chametz is, but if you're selling your apartment, yeah, you have chametz in your apartment, you're going to your shviga, your parents, it's for Pesach. So you're writing in the shtar, this and this address, in my house, I'm selling the whole house to the goy together with the chametz. It's pashut abba. You can't sell someone else's apartment. It's not an emes and mechira. So therefore, they were misakin already that you're actually soicher. You're renting the mokim to the goy. You're not selling it to him. So like this, you're renting out, it's called subletting, okay, which lavdafki is legal. According to the law, you're lavdafki allowed to sublet, but you're subletting your apartment to the goy for the week of Pesach. And agav that, he's also koine the chametz. Now, be'emes, once you do that, you don't need a not of kablin anymore. Because you could charge him davar mu'et also. What do I care? I'm getting it back after this man has schiras anyways. It's not a mechira. Gemura, it's a mechira lefisha, which is every schiras is a mechira lefisha. So basically, right after, nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe still said you should make it a not of kabel, make a not of kabel. Huh?
For that?
No, also not. They won't use it all.
Same reason. So how are they kind of agav karka? I'm saying they suffer double more.
They do schiras with davar Schiras with davar there's no problem.
Looking in agav with schiras.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, why am I saying yeah? I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure. Even if not, so we do one mokim with mechira. Now,
but you can't sell those belongs to you.
no, only that belongs to you. The one, no, the Rav picks one mokim, his house, his office. Yeah.
So the Rav has to own property.
Yeah. For whoever's doing it. Yeah, sure. Yeah. The Rav can sell his personal house. Yeah, why not? Sure.
I'm saying a Rav that sells something has to own property.
Yeah, it's usually a shul. It's usually a corporation. Usually the Rav in the shul sells the office. I remember it. Rabbi Weberman, he would sell one room in the back of the shul of his house to the God. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. Now, L'Poel Mamish, like I said, we still use an art of Kabbalah even though it's only schidus. We feidish do that. That's what the Alter Rebbe wrote. So that's what's L'Poel done. So we do Kinyan agav. And we do Kinyan kessef. We also do a Kinyan handshake, not Kinyan chlippin. The Alter Rebbe doesn't put chlippin in the shtar. He holds like the shit is chlippin by a goy doesn't work. So we do Kinyan a handshake, or it's musa. It's called. The Alter Rebbe brings in the Shulchan Aruch. Whatever is considered a Kinyan ba'isei hamokim also works a ba'isei hazman. And basically, if you take all these inyanim into consideration, you have a basic mechiras chametz kedasuk and then that is chal. Okay, the pashtus you could find in every single kinyan something that doesn't always work. Mistama. Therefore, anyone who's makbid not to sell chametz gober, there's a mokim for that. We as Lubavitcher Chassidim, we're not makbid. The Alter Rebbe tells us exactly what to do, so we don't care. But if someone is makbid not to sell chametz gober, there is a mokim for that because every single kinyan can mention of an epis pickbook, find epis poisik that says that it's not good. So if you have a brede in life, in Yiddishkeit, we run our lives because there's no brede. What is it? You let it go outside in the rain, even though your clothing is going to get wet. And shriyos is kibusa, even though the chatchila, you can't dip your clothing into a river unless you're heilig dvar mitzvah. Yeah, that's the din. That's Chachamim set it up because there's no choice. But if you have a choice, I've had it. But I know a story. You just have to be careful if you don't know what you're doing. A particular shliach, I wouldn't call him a Rav, told my father, no, he has no prayer. He doesn't need to go sell the chametz to the guy. He takes all the shtarei hashah that he has, and he has a desk. He puts it into his desk, and he sells the desk to the guy. So the guy owns paper. That's what the guy owns. There's no kinyan, not on the chametz, not on anything. And he sells them the desk together with all the shtarei. It's not kinyan. It's not chal. It's a garnish. So you have to be careful. Actually happened. I know Shmoy, maybe even Shem Imoy if I look it up. But I'm not going to say Kimuv in any names. But you have to be careful. It just reminds me once, Reb Zalman Shimon told my father, Reb Zalman Shimon, by the way, Reb Zalman Shimon, the star that we use today, most of the Lubavitcher Rabbanim, was rewritten by Reb Zalman Shimon, I believe, because the Alter Rebbe star has about the kessef Yorim Hoydei, and also it's, it was relevant in his times. It has to be tweaked and changed, the different kinds of chametz that we have today. So the star that we have today was rewritten by Reb Zalman Shimon. Reb Zalman Shimon told my father once, the Shliach called him that he's being misaded a get, and he has a shaila, exactly something about the get. Reb Zalman Shimon tells my father, du Eicher Yisrael, was du machst a get, a Shliach out there, hat keine Ahnung, was tut, macht a get. You can't do these things unless you actually know what you're doing. Chas v'sholem, you can be machshel yidden who are eat by Rabbi Matzah. You're also machshel yidden who are going to eat chametz from your store or from your house after Pesach, because it's chametz shavar alav Pesach. You have to be very careful to make sure it's done mamish kedas ukedin. Otherwise, it reminds me, Rabbi Moshe Begamilski once has a story. He went on Merkishlichus. They used to sell Pasha Merkish for him in those years. So he was selling the kavnoki on Hilchos Gittin. So he met one of the Rabbonim and the young Israels. He says, no, I don't need the kavnoki. I have the Magen Avram, and that's how I write a get. He didn't even know there's no Magen Avram. So you have to be careful when you do these inyanim. Now, this is the basic sugya of the shtar mechiras chametz of Alter Rebbe. By the way, afterwards, the Alter Rebbe has a whole other piece. What midei dabri min inyan ba'isa inyan? The Alter Rebbe says they also used to sell a behema hamavakeres. Just so you know, this is the Alter Rebbe has a whole nakuda about this. A behema that's about to have a bchor is a great tzara, because if you have a bchor today, it's kodesh and it's also begiza v'aveda until it gets a mum. You can't wash it. Actually, the famous joke as it goes, a behema that was running around, you couldn't wash it, you couldn't clean it, and the kinder verlagen sagen, heilig bist du, aber stinken stinkst du. It's an alte Wort. Weißt doch, Mensch, wer heilig, you can sagen, sein heilig, und you can stinken. Alter Rebbe says exactly how to make the mechira. You have to have a shutvis, only a certain aver. You can't have the goya shutef only in the leg. What about the mechiras chametz? Now, there's a few other nekudas legabe mechiras chametz that are important to know. The famous shaila legabe tfilas kelim, just to make a ha'ara, you should know that. Many poskim, many people don't want to sell chametz diki kelim to the goy, because once you sell the chametz diki kelim to the goy, you have to be toivel the kelim l'chayre when it comes back. Be'etzem, any kelim that doesn't have any chametz be'en, we're not selling anyways, because kelim that are blue in chametz, not only you're not able by Rabbi Matzah, you're allowed to use them on Pesach for cold, but okay, that's what says Shulchan Aruch and Tafel and Aleph right in the beginning. You're allowed to use chametz diki kelim b'derech aray meikar adin. And we actually use them. I mean, our counters, if you're not cashing your counters, you're actually using the counter. You're covering it. To say that you're using, you're being mishtamesh. What? We cover it. We're matzniya. I'm just showing you something. Hasta kasha. Say that. But akaponim, you don't have to sell kalim. The kalim that have chametz be'en, those kalim you're selling. So those, some in the shtar only write the chametz, not the kalim. So the Rebbe has a whole sikh on it. The Litvish Rabbanim are also asking for other different reasons. Many put the two together. The Rebbe is made Bedayik and Rashi in Pasha Matos. Menigeh Hagolas Kelim and Tfilas Kelim. Rashi learns Kol Shaloi Yovei Ba'esh Taviru B'mayim. Rashi learns Pshat over there. It means Tfilas Kelim. Yovei Ba'esh means Hagola and Libun. Lo Yovei Ba'esh means Tfilas Kelim. Other Rishonim learn Lo Yovei Ba'esh means Hagola. But the Rashi learns over there it's Tfilas Kelim. Tfilas Kelim. The Raisa, according to many poskim. Rashi writes, Lachshire Mino Yisro. The Rebbe has a whole diuk that if it wasn't the Chalal Be'efshorius for the goy to use the keli, you're not chayiv b'tvila. So that's why in our shtar, the Rebbe argues with his zayd, it's all in the sikha, the lavut, with the b'shara that we sell the kelim, even though you're not chayiv, and therefore you're still not chayiv b'tvila when you get it back. Another nekuda, it's important to note, that the Rabbeim, says b'feidish na yem, they would sell the chametz to the rov, they would not be marsha the rov to sell the chametz to a goy, they would actually sell it directly to the rov, but out of kabbalah. The pashtus, hail v'nofik. Because I'm sure you could sell it to the Rav B'Dov Ramut. I mean, the Rav's going to give the Rebbe back the chametz, B'Pashtus, after Pesach when he gets it back from the Goy. But nevertheless, U'Be'or of Kabbalah, they would sell the chametz to the Rav. Greisem Ekushorim, still sell their chametz to the Rav. So the cost now per dollar, which Rav has time to sit with every single guy to sell them his particular chametz. Now, while we're on the subject, you have to be careful. If you're traveling away, you have to make sure to sell the chametz. If it's in an earlier place, you can't rely on the mechid. This year, actually, you could, because we're selling it a day early. But in most years, you have to sell it in the place where you're going to be. I know Rabbonim that make a mechira, the oil larba also, because all their people that go to Eretz Yisrael, they want the mechira, as we'll talk about in a moment. Yeah. So b'meila they make a special mechira oil larba in order that it should be chal when they're in Eretz Yisrael before this man, and then the next day they do for all the people over here. What's the sign of paying it off? Because everybody knows that, huh?
I want to do everything.
Because people are still selling. All the shluchim are faxing. My father gets emails and faxes up until the last minute. The phone is going from my house. When I became older and I stopped going to the mechiras chametz, when I became a metupel, so I was at home. B'shas this was going on. I said, "Tutzach celebrity kafei that the shluchim are still calling," and I forgot, or I just found the guy till the last second. So many times the rabbanim say they make it an hour early, and they're including in the starters it should be chal a minute before. Like this year, the mechiras chal minute before Shabbos was different shittis and different minhagim of how it works. Anything that's going to come, say that, mask it. There was one other nakuda I wanted to say.
About paying it off.
About paying it off. Yeah, thank you. So, what's this business about paying it off? So, for some reason in Lubavitch, we don't understand these in Yonim. But by the Welt, this is how it works. You have a rov in a kehila, you ask him shilas a whole year. You can't pay that off every time you come to him with a matter and he says kosher, shave my check. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. And what if he says not kosher? What if he says not kosher? What is right? It's all not checked. So akaponim, they found a man when the Rav does a professional service for you, like a lawyer, lahavdil. No, not lahavdil. Most lawyers are yidden, no. So for a professional service, tzot madach, yeah. So that's the opportunity that people in the kehillah found to be able to write a check to their Rav, because matching the Rav from his salary.
So you do chametz specifically by the Rav?
This is, I'm telling you the way it used to be. There was one Rav in Stott. Actually, in most of the big Ungarische kehillas, they have dayanim. The Rav is a figure, then you have the dayanim that actually get the shilas who prepared the ksubet. The Rav is beside the kedushin, and there's dayanim who sit there, yeah, and that's their parnosa. The kilo doesn't pay enough. And the parnosis from Siddur Kiddushin, Abisul, Apar Dalet, and these professional services, Al Derech Zeh Purim, to say that in the Kehillas, in the Shlachmonis, they put in a check. I mean, people don't know what that is today. So that's really where it comes from. But some poskim, right, that there's still an inyan to pay the Rav in this case, because then it's not only a shlichus, he becomes a poil. Because the shlichus, you have to rely on chazokes. When it becomes your poil, it's mamish. The Gemara says in Bab Metzia that a yad poil ki yad balabais. Mamish, yad poil ki yad balabais. So when you pay him, it's mamish like a poil. Merkez should pay this. They should talk. Well, you don't have to pay a lot. So therefore I tell the bochrim, do you have to pay that off? No. The bochrim, but you should still give something. But I just want to point out a little story that happened with me. I remember it was Erev Pesach in the morning. After davening, I'm with my father in shul, and particularly the man comes over, I forgot to sell the chametz. Can I still sell the chametz? So, yes, sell the chametz. So I watched this with my father. Anyway, do I have to pay? My father says, no, you don't have to pay. Some people give money. He says, you don't have to pay. This guy says, yeah, do I have to pay? My father answers him his regular line, no, you don't have to pay. I'm a big mouth. So I tell him, yeah, the minig is, you should pay that off. Fine. So he puts his hand in his pocket, takes out $3. So he come on, and he gives it to my father, and I felt like so bad. It's like I'm patching upon him. Best it's all garnish if you're in Geman. They give $3. But the minig is, the Rav does a professional service. You have to give something. I mean, if it's your Rav that you use and you speak to a whole year, that's an opportunity. It's a vibe from the Rav to give the Rav a little bit. But some of you are going to become Rabbanim and Shluchim. Don't be disappointed when people are going to use you for everything and anything, and you're not going to get anything. Like I once was mekabel from my father, was the chilik of a marriage therapist and a Rav. $300 an hour. That's the whole difference. There is no other difference. But Al Kaponim, while I'm on the subject, I can still sleep for 4 or 5 minutes. Not on the side of but it's time when it comes to other inyanim, like about Pesach, when you get minhagim and chumris. So this comes up the conversation a lot in yeshiva between the bochrim. This chumra, a bocher came over to me. What kind of chumris am I supposed to take? So. You have to, Rabbi Heller, once said, a guy comes over that he's minigis that on Pesach, that he wants to kasher, he wants to buy the chickens, nicht gekashet, and his wife should kasher the chickens for him out of Pesach. So he used to scream, Frum ist sein für sich, nicht für jenem. These chumris, many of these chumris don't have real mikoides, but you can't be mizalzel in any of these chumris. Many of them, altito ishtoira simecha, okay? And you start doing research, you'll see that some of them, have no market. So this is my own, I'm just throwing out my own in you. I have no idea if this is true. The minig is people who use sugar on Pesach. They boil. I don't use sugar on Pesach. Why? Because my father doesn't use sugar on Pesach. So my Zayda does. My father, Eisiv Chumre, because the Rebbe didn't. So he doesn't use sugar on Pesach. But if you use sugar, you cook the sugar. Why you cook the sugar on Pesach? Why you cook the sugar on Pesach? In order that if there's any chametz, it should be bottled. That's the basic tenets. But it's not really true. The real reason why they cook sugar on Pesach is you want to sift the sugar. Anyone who cooks sugar on Pesach, then you run it through a cheesecloth and you sift the sugar. So, this is my own tater. There's no reason to cook sugar today. A Moleki Yordan, sugar was in a block. And you went to the store, the guy took a hammer, you want sugar on Pesach, no chametz there. What do? You have to sift the sugar. The only way to sift the sugar is to cook it, to turn it into a liquid, and then you can sift it. Today you're buying sugar, granulated sugar. You want to sift it because you don't trust the hechsher of the okay because you think somebody put a level break. No problem. Spread it out on your.
You do find stuff in
Nachamo?
You do find pieces in the
Chametz. Schmutz nicht chametz. Kiyudua. Akaponim. Al derech zeh lemosul milchiks. I'm throwing you my own rants. This doesn't mean this is emes. People only milchiks on Pesach. One of the reasons are because the behemoths, you couldn't keep milk fresh. It's not so cold outside. So you have to milk the behemoth every day. And the behemoth could have eaten chametz. I have a better reason why people don't eat milchiks. It was too expensive to buy another set of dishes for 8 days. You have to buy dishes. You don't have to throw away. So for 8 days, you're going to buy a whole set for a week. In Samach, there was no idea of process. That I can guarantee you. There was never a shayla. Huh? Only vodka was processed. Exactly. Well, I'm trying to point out that you start in your own homes. Many of you have your own Pesach. So you have to. You can't be mizalzel in any of these chumras and any of these ideas. Some people don't eat fish. Some people don't eat cucumbers because cucumbers has seeds. Seeds we didn't figure out you could peel them. But now we figured out you could buy hard tomatoes and push it. You could peel them. Today there's debate. When I was a kid, what the Sakaponim, everything is al tita shtoyda simecha. Avocado on matzah. What do you ask me if it's mutter or not? So if you look in the Svarim it says it's mutter, but some people not to put it on the matzah. Svarim that are printed, contras and PDFs that are ordered. In those Svarim, that's what it says. If you're wondering. And anything like that. In Lubavitch, they used to have shmura wine that was made sure there's no water. The cheap wines for sure probably have water. The wine. Stay the wine or milk. Shmura, you have to make sure. Shmura, what's this? Make sure there's a drop of water. And everything. But upon him, and see things that are muchrech, wine and matzah and salt. So everybody has their own minhagim, and you can't be mezalzel, and you can't be mezalzel people who eat what they call products. Okay, you can't be mezalzel in that either. It does feel not Pesach to people who grew up not eating any of these things to cut a geschmack, I don't know what geschmack, looks geschmack, shtickle cake, and eat it on Pesach. But nevertheless, kol chad v'chad lefum shuri delay. We should have a kosher feilich on Pesach and zeiches and nechel shom min ha'psochim u'min ha'zvochim this year, and Mashiach shall come. Shana above the Shalayim ready this Pesach. Shkoyach.
Yeah.